Recall that the domain is a set of all real numbers which can be used as input that produce a real numbers output. And by default, you get all real numbers unless there's something about the function that creates an exception. So for instance, the function defined by x cubed plus 3x plus 6 to the x, that domain is going to be all reals written negative infinity to infinity. One of the exceptions is created when you have a function that's written with fractions. So reminder that if in a fraction the denominator is 0, then you don't get a value. So that's going to be a place where a function will be undefined. So we've got to avoid the situation of the denominator being 0. That word avoid here is really key. So for example, the domain of f of x equals 1 over x minus 6 is all reals except 6. Now, there will be some later exceptions created by square roots and by logarithms, but let's not worry about those yet. Let's look at a slightly bigger example. Find the domain of f of x equals x minus 9 all over x squared minus 7x minus 12. So we need to avoid the denominator equaling 0. Right? We don't want the denominator to be 0. I think it's super important, based on what we're going to do very soon, to get the word avoid written here. So we're going to solve this equation and then say whatever x values we get, oh, not those. Right? So if the word avoid is still written here, factor the left side, x minus 3 times x minus 4 equals 0. Zero product property, and then solve each of these equations. We need to avoid when x is 3. We also have to avoid when x is 4. So the domain here is going to be negative infinity to 3, union 3 to 4, union 4 to infinity. So just because 3 and 4 are consecutive doesn't mean that you shouldn't include that interval 3 to 4. So often, and in the box you see what WebWork, how to write this in WebWork. So the union symbol, just type in a capital U, and for infinity, INF should work. Now, what about in the numerator, this x equals 9? Sometimes people are worried about this. It's OK if the numerator is 0. The thing is, please don't forget that middle interval. X can be a number between 3 and 4. So for instance, having the input x equaling 3.5, that's OK. So just to make sure we understand that x equals 9 doesn't cause a concern, that's not really a problem, let's find f of 9. So 9 is totally valid as an input, because if you compute f of 9, you're going to get 0 over 6, which simplifies to 0. That's a number. That's totally fine. As another follow-up, just to ensure we're talking about how the domain should include the numbers between 3 and 4, just don't include 3 and don't include 4, but all the numbers in between are fine. So f of 3.5 is going to be defined, and it looks like this, which is quite a mess, and using the calculator, it looks like that. I wouldn't worry about this problem as some kind of question that's going to get asked specifically. The whole point here is just to illustrate the idea that you don't want to forget the numbers that are between 3 and 4, just because 3 and 4 are consecutive whole numbers.